Did you know that behind the wild fame and rock star energy of Axl Rose lies a deeply painful and complicated past? Few know the real battles he faced offstage. What secrets does his past hold? Join us as we uncover the heartbreaking tragedy of Axl Rose's life. The making of a rebel. From the very beginning, Axl Rose's life was shaped by pain, fear, and confusion. Born William Bruce Rose Jr. in Lafayette, Indiana, his early childhood was marked by instability. After his biological father left the family when he was very young, his mother remarried. Axl's stepfather, Stephen Bailey, brought not just discipline, but a heavy and extreme form of Pentecostal Christianity into the home. What followed was a life built around rigid religious rules and emotional pressure that would leave a deep mark on Axl's mind and spirit. Religion wasn't just a belief in their household. It was used as a tool of control. His stepfather viewed nearly every form of modern entertainment as evil. Television was considered satanic. Music, especially rock, was completely banned. Any expression of individuality or curiosity outside of religion was treated as sinful. This strict religious environment left Axl feeling deeply confused and isolated. He was told to fear the outside world, yet he didn't understand why normal things like music or TV were wrong. As he grew older, the pressure to conform to these extreme beliefs weighed heavily on him. He began to feel emotionally trapped, forced to live under rules that didn't make sense to him. Church was not a place of peace for him. It was a place of emotional manipulation. What should have been a space for spiritual guidance became a place where he felt brainwashed and broken down. Over time, this emotional repression built up inside him like a ticking time bomb. The pain, frustration, and fear he experienced as a child would follow him into adulthood, shaping how he saw the world and how he treated people. Eventually, Axl rejected the religious teachings that had haunted his youth. He began to see them as lies used to control him, not truths that could guide him. This rejection wasn't just about religion. It was his way of taking back control over his own identity. He was no longer willing to accept someone else's version of what was right or wrong. This moment marked the beginning of his rebellion, not just against religion, but against authority, control, and the trauma of his past. Axl Rose wasn't just another troubled teenager. He was smart, really smart. In fact, during his school years, he tested in the top 3% of IQ placement exams. That's the kind of score most people would think leads straight to college, scholarships, and a bright future. But Axl's story went in the opposite direction. Despite his intelligence, school never worked for him. It wasn't because he couldn't keep up. It was because he didn't want to follow rules that didn't make sense to him. From early on, Axl clashed with the structure of the education system. He didn't like being told what to do or how to think. This disconnect grew stronger as he got older. He ended up dropping out of school twice, first in 11th grade and then again as a senior. These weren't acts of failure. They were acts of rebellion from someone who felt caged by the system. Outside of school, Axl started to carve out his own path, but it wasn't always a safe one. In a 1989 Rolling Stone interview, he openly talked about how he used to get in trouble for fun. He didn't try to hide it. He was honest about the fact that some of his actions were reckless. He hung out with a rough crowd, drank underage, got into fights, and didn't seem to care much about the consequences at the time. These early brushes with the law started piling up. At first, they were small things: fighting in public, breaking curfew, or being caught with alcohol. But things escalated. One particular incident led to a more serious legal problem. It wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It turned into a legal mess that included a stint in jail. Axl didn't talk much about the details, but the experience left a mark. It was a moment where his anger and rebellion caught up with him. The system he'd always fought against now had full control over him, even if only for a short time. A love life on fire. Axl Rose's love life has often mirrored the chaos and intensity of his music. His relationships were never quiet or easy. They were full of highs and lows, deep connection, and deep conflict. The emotional weight he carried from childhood shaped how he gave and received love. passionately, but often destructively. One of his most famous relationships was with Erin Everly, daughter of Don Everly of the Everly Brothers. Axl and Erin shared a deep emotional bond, and she became the inspiration for one of Guns N' Roses' most beloved songs, Sweet Child of Mine. The lyrics came straight from Axl's feelings for her. Their love had a kind of purity in the beginning. It was real and intense. But behind the romantic image, their relationship was filled with struggle. They got married in 1990, but their time together was unstable. There were moments of peace and love, but they didn't last. The marriage quickly became a mix of affection and emotional outbursts. Both of them carried pain, and those wounds often showed up in the form of arguments, accusations, and breakdowns. Erin later described the relationship as abusive, and their marriage ended in divorce less than a year later. The connection was real, but the damage ran too deep for it to survive. After Erin, Axl began another high-profile relationship, this time with supermodel Stephanie Seymour. Their romance looked glamorous from the outside. The couple appeared together in the November Rain music video, playing a fictional version of their real relationship. But the reality behind the scenes was far more complicated. The relationship was fiery and dramatic. Axl's personal issues, combined with the pressures of fame and the constant attention from the media, created constant tension. Stephanie and Axl fought often, and their arguments became public. Fans and tabloids followed every move, adding even more pressure. What could have been private healing or communication was instead played out in front of millions of people. Through it all, Axl never stopped searching for love. But like many things in his life, it often came with fire. Next, we'll see how that same fire fueled his rise to the top of rock and roll. Rage on display. By 1989, Axl Rose was one of the biggest rock stars in the world. But fame didn't make him calm or stable. In fact, the pressure seemed to make his emotional struggles even worse. A visit from Rolling Stone magazine to his condo that year gave the public a rare and raw look into his inner chaos. What the writers saw was not the home of a successful rock icon. Instead, it looked like the aftermath of a personal hurricane. Inside his condo, the damage was hard to ignore. Guitars were smashed, and platinum records, symbols of his success, were broken and scattered. Furniture was torn up. The place was filled with destruction. These weren't just random accidents. This was the physical result of Axl's anger and emotional outbursts. He hadn't just lost control once. This was the buildup of many moments of rage, frustration, and inner pain. For Axl, anger was more than just a reaction. It became a release. He had so much unresolved pain inside, built up from childhood trauma, pressure from fame, and his own personal demons. When that pain got too heavy, it came out through destruction. He broke things because he didn't know how to express what he was feeling in a healthy way. He didn't always have the words, so he used his fists or his voice. And the damage it left behind was real. Many of his tantrums were triggered by stress. Whether it was fights with band members, pressure from managers, or personal heartbreak, Axl often reacted with rage. Instead of calming down or stepping back, he exploded. His anger seemed almost uncontrollable. In many ways, it became his default way of coping. While some people cry or shut down, Axl fought. He yelled, broke things, and pushed people away. Slash, Guns N' Roses' iconic guitarist and one of Axl's closest collaborators for years, once said, "Axl is a magnet for problems." It wasn't just the trouble found Axl, it was that his energy pulled it in. His intensity was hard to ignore. It drew people in, but it also scared them. Friends, bandmates, and producers, they all felt it. Some stuck around hoping they could help or that things would change. Others left, burned out by the drama. This volatility was one of Axl's most defining traits. It made him unpredictable. One moment, he could be warm and thoughtful. The next, he was in a rage. For some, that was too much to handle. For others, it added to his legend. It was part of what made him so powerful on stage. His emotion was raw and real, but off stage, it created chaos for everyone around him. Axl's rage wasn't just a part of his personality, it was a symptom of deeper struggles, and the people closest to him often got caught in the middle of it. Riots and No Shows. One of the most infamous moments came on July 2nd, 1991, in St. Louis, Missouri. During a concert at the Riverport Amphitheater, Axl noticed a fan in the front row taking photos. He was already agitated that security hadn't done anything about it. In a sudden burst of anger, he dove into the crowd to deal with the fan himself. After being pulled back to the stage, he grabbed the microphone and announced, "I'm out of here," before storming off. That was it. The band left, the lights came on, and the crowd lost control. What followed was a full-blown riot. Fans destroyed the venue, tearing seats, flipping equipment, and smashing windows. 60 people were injured, including security staff and concert-goers. 16 arrests were made. Damages totaled around $200,000. Axl Rose was later charged with inciting a riot, but he didn't face trial until more than a year later. The incident became one of the darkest chapters in the band's history. Just a year later, another riot broke out, this time in Montreal, Canada. It happened during the joint Guns N' Roses and Metallica tour. Metallica's frontman, James Hetfield, was badly burned in a pyrotechnic accident earlier in the night. With Hetfield rushed to the hospital, Guns N' Roses were expected to salvage the show. Instead, things got worse. Axl came on stage late and seemed unhappy with the sound quality. After performing for less than an hour, he told the crowd he couldn't continue and walked off. The band left, and fans were left confused and furious. What happened next was chaos. Riots broke out in the streets. People smashed shop windows, looted stores, and set fires. Cars were damaged, police were overwhelmed, and the city took a beating, all because the crowd felt abandoned and disrespected. By 2002, Axl had a new lineup of Guns N' Roses and was trying to reintroduce the band, but the issues hadn't gone away. On November 7th, 2002, fans packed GM Place in Vancouver, Canada, expecting a show. But Axl didn't show up. The reasons were unclear. Some blamed flight delays, others claimed Axl had a last-minute change of heart. Regardless, the result was the same. The show was canceled, and the fans rioted again. They tore down fences, smashed windows, and clashed with security. The scene looked like something out of a war zone. And once again, Axl Rose was at the center of the storm. These weren't isolated incidents. Throughout Guns N' Roses' history, concerts were delayed, cut short, or canceled entirely, sometimes with no explanation at all. Fans never knew what to expect. Would Axl show up? Would he finish the set? Would he even speak to the crowd? This unpredictability damaged the band's image. It strained their relationship with promoters, venues, and even other bands. Many venues stopped wanting to work with them. Insurance rates went up, lawsuits piled in. The stress also added tension between Axl and the rest of the band. Slash and other members often found themselves caught in the middle, trying to hold things together while Axl made decisions that shocked everyone. For fans, the pattern was frustrating. Some felt betrayed after spending money and getting nothing. Others kept coming back, hoping to witness something historic, even if it was for the wrong reasons. Every concert became a gamble. Still, no matter how bad it got, Axl Rose remained a compelling figure. He was chaotic, yes, but he was also one of the most electrifying frontmen rock had ever seen. Bipolar disorder and therapy. Axl Rose's intense emotional ups and downs, long visible to the public, finally found a clearer explanation with a formal diagnosis: bipolar disorder. This diagnosis helped put some of his past behavior into perspective. Instead of just being seen as difficult or volatile, Slater's mood swings and outbursts were recognized as part of a serious mental health condition. Bipolar disorder causes extreme shifts in mood, energy, and activity levels, making it hard for those who have it to maintain steady emotions or relationships. Before this diagnosis, Many saw Axl's behavior as simply reckless or attention-seeking. But with bipolar disorder in the picture, his struggles became easier to understand. The rapid swings between feeling on top of the world and then crashing into deep lows could explain the chaos that seemed to follow him on and off stage. It also showed that the anger and rage that sometimes erupted weren't always under his full control. One of the hardest parts about dealing with bipolar disorder for Axl was finding the right treatment. Medications, often prescribed to manage mood swings, sometimes made him feel numb rather than healed. Instead of feeling like himself, he described feeling emotionally flat, disconnected from both pain and joy. This numbness was frustrating because it dulled his creativity and energy, things essential for a musician like him. The search for a balance between managing symptoms and staying true to his artistic self was a constant struggle. In 1991, Axl took a different step by undergoing regression therapy. This type of therapy is designed to help people explore and confront deep, repressed memories, often from childhood. For Axl, it meant facing the trauma he had buried for years, especially the abuse and emotional pain he experienced growing up in a difficult family environment. During therapy, he worked on confronting the screaming 2-year-old inside him. This phrase represents the scared and hurt child he felt trapped within, a part of him that had never really healed. Regression therapy helped Axl look directly at these painful parts of himself, rather than pushing them away or expressing them through anger. It was a difficult and sometimes painful process, but it gave him a way to understand the roots of his struggles. This therapy didn't magically fix everything, but it offered a chance for healing and growth. It showed how deeply his early life experiences affected his mental health and personality. By confronting these memories, he began to see patterns in his behavior that made more sense. His outbursts, fears, and emotional turmoil were tied to long-buried wounds. Still, managing bipolar disorder and trauma is a long journey with ups and downs. Axl's story reminds us that mental health is complex and personal. His willingness to seek help, despite the challenges, shows strength amid chaos. Downward spiral. Axl Rose's life outside of music was often marked by moments of intense conflict and legal trouble. His physical altercations and run-ins with the law made headlines around the world, contributing to a public image that was as volatile as it was fascinating. These incidents didn't just affect his personal life, they shaped how fans, the media, and even his bandmates saw him. One of the earliest and most serious incidents happened in 1987. During a visit to Atlanta, Axl got into a physical fight that ended with him hitting a police officer. This wasn't just a small scuffle, it was a serious assault on law enforcement, which brought immediate legal consequences. The event reflected the kind of anger and frustration that often bubbled under the surface for him. It wasn't just about the moment. It was a glimpse into how quickly things could spiral out of control when tensions ran high. In 1990, another violent episode made news. Axl got into a confrontation with a neighbor, and things escalated to the point where he assaulted the neighbor with a wine bottle. This incident showed a pattern of aggression triggered by personal conflicts, and it added to his growing reputation for unpredictability. Fans and critics alike began to see him not only as a talented musician, but also as someone who could be dangerous when pushed. The late 1990s and early 2000s brought more legal trouble, keeping Axl in the spotlight for reasons other than his music. In 1998, at Phoenix Airport, Axl lost control during a confrontation with the TSA. The situation escalated quickly, leading to a public scene that ended with him being detained. Airport security incidents are often taken seriously, and this episode added to the narrative of a star who struggled with authority and rules. In 2006, Axl found himself on the wrong side of the law again during a trip to Norway. There, he bit a hotel security guard during an altercation. This shocking behavior was widely reported and further fueled media coverage of his erratic behavior. The incident showed how even in the middle of international tours and public appearances, Axl's temper could flare into violence. What ties all these incidents together is a cycle of chaos fueled by alcohol, aggression, and confrontation. Axl Rose's struggles with substance use often made controlling his emotions harder. Alcohol was a common factor in many of these altercations, lowering inhibitions and increasing impulsiveness. When combined with his naturally intense personality and a history of personal trauma, these moments of violence seemed almost inevitable. This cycle wasn't just harmful to those around him, it took a toll on Axl himself. Each run-in with the law brought stress, legal battles, and bad press. His relationships with friends, family, and bandmates were often strained or broken because of his unpredictable outbursts. Yet, despite the negative consequences, public fascination with Axl's behavior only grew. His reputation as a wild and rebellious rock star made headlines, keeping him constantly in the public eye. The media often portrayed Axl as a symbol of rock and roll excess, dangerous, powerful, and untamed. While this image brought attention and sometimes admiration from fans, it also made it harder for him to break free from the cycle. When people expect you to act a certain way, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Through it all, Axl Rose remained a complex figure. Behind the headlines and arrests was a man dealing with deep emotional wounds, mental health struggles, and a fierce drive to express himself. His story shows how fame and personal demons can collide in ways that are difficult to escape. And just when it seemed like the chaos might settle, new challenges and surprises were still waiting ahead, ready to shake things up once again. Tragedy on stage. The 1988 Monsters of Rock Festival at Castle Donington was supposed to be a thrilling night for rock fans, a huge gathering of music lovers eager to see some of the biggest names in rock perform live. More than 120,000 people had come together to enjoy the music, but what happened that night turned into a heartbreaking tragedy that left a lasting impact on everyone involved. The weather that day was far from ideal. Heavy rain soaked the massive crowd, making the ground slippery and conditions dangerous. With such a huge number of people packed closely together, the situation became difficult to manage. There was very little crowd control in place, and the organizers were overwhelmed by the sheer size and energy of the audience. As the bands played on, tensions began to rise in the crowd. Unfortunately, the crowded, slippery conditions caused panic and chaos. Tragically, 2 fans were crushed to death in the crush of people trying to move and find space. The panic and the accident shook the entire event, but the band performing on stage at the time was not even aware of what had happened. Axl Rose and his band were playing their set without knowing the full extent of the disaster unfolding in the crowd. It wasn't until hours later, after the show had ended, that they learned about the deaths. This news hit them hard. The reality that their performance had taken place while people were suffering and losing their lives was deeply upsetting. The emotional aftermath was heavy. The band members had to process the shock and sadness of what had occurred, knowing that their music had been part of an event that turned deadly. This was a stark reminder of the serious responsibility that comes with performing in front of massive crowds. For Axl Rose, the tragedy at Castle Donington was a painful moment that brought the risks of live performances into sharp focus. Reflection on responsibility became unavoidable. Even though the band was not directly responsible for the crowd control or safety measures, the incident raised questions about the roles that artists, promoters, and organizers play in keeping fans safe. It was a sobering experience that challenged Axl and his bandmates to think more deeply about the impact their concerts could have beyond just the music. The tragedy also revealed the darker side of stardom, the fact that the energy and excitement of a live rock show could sometimes spiral into dangerous territory. It was a reminder that behind the glamour and adrenaline of performing in front of tens of thousands, there were real lives and real risks involved. For the fans, the festival was meant to be a night of celebration and joy, but it became a night of loss and mourning. The memories of those who died stayed with the community, and the event became a somber chapter in rock history. Castle Donington taught a harsh lesson about the importance of safety, preparation, and care at large events. It also left a mark on Axl Rose's perspective as an artist, shaping how he approached his role on stage and his awareness of the people who came to see him. The Slash Feud. The feud between Axl Rose and Slash, two of rock's most iconic figures, is one of the most talked-about stories in music history. Their rocky relationship lasted for decades, filled with misunderstandings, anger, and public fights, before finally surprising everyone with a reunion years later. The problems between Slash and Axl didn't start overnight. One major source of tension came from Slash's work outside the band. He had collaborated with Michael Jackson on some music, which Rose reportedly didn't take well. This professional choice by Slash stirred old wounds tied to Rose's own past trauma and insecurities. Rose had a complicated history, including struggles with trust and feeling betrayed. Slash's outside projects added fuel to the fire, making their working relationship more strained. As tensions grew, their problems went beyond just personal feelings. The media quickly caught on and began reporting on every small conflict between the two, which made matters worse. Every disagreement was magnified, turning what might have been private issues into public drama. The band's fans and the press followed every heated word and every cold silence, deepening the divide. The feud didn't stay just personal. It quickly became legal. Both Rose and Slash were involved in lawsuits over royalties and rights connected to Guns N' Roses music. These battles were not just about money. They represented deeper disagreements about control and credit. The music that had once united them became a source of conflict. The verbal attacks during this time were harsh. Rose famously called Slash cancer, implying that Slash was a destructive force within the band. On the other side, Slash said Rose hates his guts, showing just how much bitterness had built up between them. Their public insults showed a deep rift that seemed impossible to repair. Despite this, both men continued to acknowledge each other's importance in the band and its history. The music they made together was legendary, even if their relationship was broken. Then, in 2018, something surprising happened. After years of hostility, Rose and Slash decided to reunite on stage. This was unexpected for many fans and critics alike. Their reunion was a moment of healing, showing that even the deepest wounds can sometimes be repaired. The emotional impact of this reunion was huge. Both men had clearly grown and changed over the years, and their coming back together was more than just a business decision. It felt like a personal reconciliation. Fans who had followed their feud for years were thrilled to see them perform together again. The commercial impact was also significant. The reunion led to sold-out tours and revived interest in Guns N' Roses music, proving that despite their past problems, the band still had an enormous influence and appeal. This reunion didn't erase the past, but it showed that even decades of disdain and conflict could be set aside for something bigger: music and shared history. The Slash feud, with all its anger and pain, eventually turned into a story of hope and renewal. And just as things seemed to be settling, the band and its members were about to face new chapters that would test their bonds in unexpected ways. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss what's coming next.